Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to our conversation. I'm Colin Mine. I'm a youth ministry coordinator here at St. Anne's Parish, and with me, as usual,
I'm Father Matthew. I'm the pastor here at St. Anne's.
Awesome. I'm bad at counting. Are we at the halfway point of this series on the 7 deadly sins?
No, last week actually was a halfway point.
Oh, we're past.
We are past the
Okay,
half. Yeah,
it's
we got this one, and then there were 2 more to go. 2 more weeks.
Okay. May. I was just saying to a staff member yesterday, it seems like May is flying by.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe because like the long weekend seems very late this year.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a thing or not. It feels late to me anyways. But yeah, exciting times. Yeah, we're in like this weird, excited, can't launch yet, but thinking, as things might reopen and summer plans, we're kind of in a bit of a dreaming phase, it seems a little bit kind of in the parish.
Yeah, so we've been doing some work on that, and because it sounds right now like May 30th, we should be at our first step in the reopening. So for us as churches, that means back up to 30% capacity to a max of 150. So we're trying to prepare for that. I find it a little bit strange that the government hasn't said a lot about it, aside from when they first announced it. But since then, I'm kind of waiting for a confirmation or something, but maybe we're not going to get one. We just going to roll with it.
There you go.
So waiting to see. And then as that happens, and if this is a longer term reopening, we've started doing some work as staff, and also the pastoral council. And also we had our AGM on the weekend too. A lot of brainstorming sessions about like how do we begin to rebuild, to reach out if this is a longer term reopening.
Yeah.
How do we start to rebuild our community again as we can come together?
And kind of the brain of, a few of us have talked of like, it's not like welcome back because people are still here. We've been here the whole time, right? But in some ways we are welcoming some people back and welcoming back more activities and things will slowly open up, but it's almost like it's a crescendo of things, right?
Yeah,
it's
that's
not like
it.
It's June 1st. Hey, we're full throttle. Like that's not going to be our reality. But
And I like it in terms of rebuilding the community, because even if people have been coming to Mass together for almost a year now, we haven't really been able to do the social piece of things. It's something that's been missing. Or actually spending time together in sharing and conversation has been a lot more difficult.
I remember. I think we had done that parish survey, and I think at the AGM and just you were saying the parish council of noticing that a lot of people are speaking this need for community and connection, and obviously the gospel and the sacraments, and what's
but those
critical
things are
to
not
us.
disconnected.
No,
right?
and to say like we have to bridge them, and there's a season of emphasis, right? And so
it's almost like if we see ourselves as like the body of Christ, we're a body that's been somehow like pulled apart for a while.
Yeah.
And still able to be together in some ways, but not like as tight together as we're supposed to be.
I mean, it's like my family in Alberta. We Zoom and we chat, like we're connected, but we are not whole, in the way that we desire, right? Yeah. And we're excited. It should become a hashtag, but in one of your brainstormings, do you want to share your P&P term that you came up with that made me laugh?
Yeah, this is not at all an official term. It's just kind of it's a term we're sticking with for a while. But we have two main strategies came out of our staff brainstorming, which I was really excited about.
Yeah.
And one of them is the one person at a time. And what we're thinking to do there is to, especially as we try to reach out to some members of our parish who maybe haven't been back to Mass yet, or even maybe have sort of drifted away from the online stuff. We thought, well, how do we reach out to them and invite them back? Mm-hmm. And the way we'd like to do that is to equip all of us as parishioners to reach out to those we know who need some help coming back. Mm-hmm. So we could equip those who are here to reach out to others to invite them back again. So that person-to-person connection. And also possibly doing that through some of our pre-existing ministries, like through Knights of Columbus, CWL, our choirs, our Justice and Peace group. Like all of those are, I guess, communities within the community of the parish.
Yeah, it's a good way to describe it.
And if they within that can help to invite people back and rebuild again. So that's the first part, the one person at a time. And second one, I think you're going for is picnics and pub crawls. It's just a term. We're not actually talking about doing.
We're not actually. We're not. I don't know if we ever will do a pub crawl, but we just like the idea of like events that bring people together, and having ideas of them and launching them when it's safe to do so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, but it's kind of like the pre-work right now of just like maybe it's a family carnival or outside things because we know we can do things maybe outside a bit safer.
And we want to be able to move as quickly as we can as things become safe.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why we're really trying to lay a lot of groundwork now.
Yeah.
So we can launch quickly when we're able to.
So I'm going to throw it out here. One of my dreams, I haven't pitched this one to you yet. So
here we go.
It's, I don't know, family carnival or something, or fun in the parking lot. But essentially, I want to have a dunk tank and raise money for maybe Hope from Malawi or our sister parish. And you can dunk Father Matt, maybe other staff members, but he'll make more money. So I don't know if he's game for it. Otherwise, it might be just me. But it's just like fun, no. Just like fun activities that bring joy and connection. And as we were saying this whole year, of what does this make possible? And to say like we can be creative and we can be safe. And to be honest, it's brought some enthusiasm back into my spirit in the last couple of days because it's just been a long year, right? And so it's like, hey, it's nice to get back into the inventing phase in a certain sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyways, that's a lot of the action we got going on here. But
yeah,
you gave us a lot to think about on the weekend as well. Shall we dive into this?
Sure. So we are talking about greed is our 7 deadly sin of the week.
There you go.
And where to start with that? So one thing I found a fun sort of challenge in this time is, as much as I want to stick with this theme, to also respect, of course, the readings and the feasts. And we have 3 big feasts, actually. So for this last one, and then the next 2 Sundays, as we finish off this series, of course, we had Ascension this past Sunday, Pentecost next Sunday, and then Holy Trinity the following Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, our first one out of this series will be Corpus Christi. That'll be good focus just on the Eucharist when that happens. But yeah, so Avarice and the Ascension. Maybe it seems like a weird sort of unity there. But we'll get into that. But what I thought about the Ascension to me really drives home is this sense of the abundance that God gives us.
Yeah.
The abundance of presence, how Jesus is leaving, but he's always with us. The abundance of grace. And the reading was from the Gospel of Mark. And I found it interesting reading Mark's Ascension, because in the others, I think it's Matthew, where there's a bit maybe more of a direct focus on the mission element of it. Go and make disciples of all nations.
Exactly, yeah.
And Mark, that was not as strong. It's still there, but I found more of a focus on Mark was in the promises Jesus gives to us as we do the mission. He talks about driving out demons and speaking in different languages and protections and healings. So just the abundance of grace that Jesus promises us as we live this faith out. And then the abundance of sharing that he calls us to, which he kind of started talking about even. This call to share the gospel, our lives, our ministries, all of that. So there really is in the Ascension this great sense of abundance. And then Avarice is in a way almost seeing the world in the opposite. Seeing the world as one of scarcity withdraws on selfishness, rather than a God of abundance who offers us generosity.
Yeah, I really like kind of that framework and that connection because, on first take, I'm not sure. I was like, well, how's he going to pull this one in? Because I'm not sure. I'm maybe more of a Matthew guy, that the Ascension is you go to the mission statement, right? But it's like, but to do your mission, I'm going to give you the tools, AKA grace, which is an abundance and, the spectrum of the other side of abundance. So it is a very neat perspective, and we'll probably dive into it more as we kind of unpack it. But just going back to my life and my wife and I sharing how we grew up in both sides of our families of, scarcity can make you do some crazy things, and this idea that if we have in the sense of God's grace is always abundant, it is always there. But I'll be honest, there's periods in my life where it feels scarce, you experience scarcity and sometimes in physical and real ways that it's hard to sometimes rely and trust in the abundance of God.
Yeah, and that does bring us to, though often I find the essential piece of all of these homilies has been how behind these 7 deadly sins is a legitimate desire wrongly pursued.
Yeah.
And for avarice, I find to understand avarice, it is really key to understand the legitimate desire, first of all. And that the best way I could find to express it is just economic stability. That having a safe place to live and good, healthy food to eat and meaningful, I described here, a meaningful role in the world. So whether that's a career or a vocation, but to know that in my life that I am, I'm trying to think of the word, but I'm doing something that is meaningful, and good for the community. All those things are all legitimate desires.
Yeah, the other word that comes to me there, I was thinking of the word meaning, but it is purpose, right? Is that you I mean, deserve is even the right word, right? It's coming to this but in my heart, it was like you deserve stability to have the chance to pursue your purpose.
Yeah,
and it breaks me sometimes in the work that I do with young people and some of the experiences I've had in missionary work where I see people that are not in a stable enough situation to really thrive or to even focus on discovering their purpose, because we're so consumed with just finding shelter, safety, food, right?
Yeah.
So it is a legitimate place to start for sure.
Yeah. And that is a key point, that wanting to like budget and have a reasonable amount of savings and like to wanting to own a home, that is not avarice. There's nothing wrong in that in itself, to have that basic economic stability that we need for ourselves and for our families.
I guess the trick of it, as you presented that, and we get into it, a little bit later in some of those studies you presented, is the line is not always clear and obvious when we've passed that.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
And that's so much the point for so many of these sins, right? And often it's a tricky thing, because part of us, like, we like to have sometimes these really clear and definite lines. This is okay, this is not. Yeah. But often when you get, like, there are some sins that are very, very clear. Like theft is wrong. Like, we can say that. Murder is wrong. But some of these things, there's not a clear line. It does take wisdom and discernment and prudence. And so maybe one thing that could help with that, though, I have two tools I gave people as kind of exercises to consider where avarice may have a hold on them. Got to flip my page because it's on the other side.
Yeah.
And these are things that I've begun thinking about myself, actually. So the first test that I gave is just to think of how I'm living right now, especially in terms of possessions and people and how I'm treating both. And if I keep handling possessions in this way for the next 10 years, what sort of character will I develop? What sort of person will I become?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one, I was like, man, a lot of my decisions I probably take with no intention of projecting 10 years into the future off of them, right? Or there's certain decisions in my life I think long term. Where is this taking me? What is it doing? But it's often some of the smaller, more subtle daily decisions that sometimes we have a more immediate perspective. And that's frankly where it can be troublesome, right? It's like, well, I'm going to run 5 days a week, and then I go to 2 days a week or 1 day a week, and then none for 8 months. And then suddenly you notice the difference of that, right? And project it over 10 years or whatever.
And the reason I like this question too is I know for myself, it's really easy for me to imagine myself doing really good things 10 years from now. Where like 10 years from now, I'll be giving away half of my money to charity and doing all these great things. But that's not at all actually. Usually, if anything, that justifies not doing the right thing now. Imagine myself doing good things in the future.
Yeah, I love how you kind of said that, is sometimes we almost use that perspective to procrastinate, to buy us time.
Or I just need to whatever. I just need to pay off my car or get this raise, or like at some point I tell myself, then I'll start to be more generous, live more generously. But of course, there's always reasons not to do that as well. And I just need to get this boat or this bigger house or this bigger raise. But I think thinking of it in terms of, if I keep doing just this, what I'm doing now for the next 10 years, what's going to happen? It does drive home for me more directly the necessity to be generous now and to build the right virtues now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If I'm the big chosen guy, right? But it's that line that's in there, in the scripture, is like, if not now, when,
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the same thing with building virtue, right? Is today you're choosing, are you building in virtue or vice, and it's
and choosing virtue 10 years from now is often choosing vice in the moment, if we're really honest.
That's true. I like that. What was your second test?
Oh, second test. Yeah. So to say, if someone had access to your bank records, credit card receipts, all your financial information, if that was all that they knew of you, what kind of person would they see? What would they consider as important to you?
Yeah, and I mean, that maybe trends more towards the adults than, the kids in that type of sense, right? But it's like, what's in her room? Or I tell, like, my daughter, as she was, setting up her bedroom a couple years ago, we moved in, is like, where's the prayer corner? Where's the Bible, like, that we gave her first communion? And it's on the stand and it's dusty, or is it by the bedside to be opened to that, right? So I try to...
They're in the closet.
So I try to frame that. I forget, was it maybe Matthew Kelly? Someone, I think it was him, said, show me your bookshelf and I'll tell you, like, kind of who you are or whatever. And
that's a good sense. Yeah, maybe for those who are not yet in charge of their own budgets, if someone just walked into your room and looked around, what kind of person would they see?
Yeah, so we try to adapt that with the kids too. Is like, what shows value? And he even went, I think, the idea, and I mean, it's not a perfect system because you could have different reasons of like, what's at eyesight versus what's at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Like your eye level, because that's maybe what you care about to see, or what prompts you. And we thought about that, not like we're crazy, but it's like there's a lot of religious art and stuff up in our church, my house.
I
Well, I
hope
guess
they're
we
not
are a
up in our
domestic church,
also.
so that's true, right? And some people have pointed it out, and it's like we don't do it to flaunt it, but we want people to know this is who we are. So we literally just the other day, just for safety and a bunch of practical reasons, had to cut down a big spruce tree in front of our living room window. So now it's down, and you can see right into our living room, and there was a massive painting, of Mary with the child Jesus right over the fireplace that everybody's going to see in Warman walking down the street. And it's twofold for me, right? It is a witness, right? It is sin and witness, or freedom and witness we're talking about, but it's also a reminder.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
When I see these prompts, it's almost like an external examine of like, if I see Mary, when was the last time I prayed the rosary, or whatever, right? And so it's interesting to break it down. But as you were saying about the credit cards and receipts, and we're doing marriage prep for a few couples right now, and we did one of the sessions was a bit more practical stuff, and we took some extra time to talk about finances and methods, and they wanted to nerd out a little bit on it, so we went there, and I pulled up like the app that I use, and I was like, oh, it'd just be easier if I just show you. And I was like 2 minutes in, I was like, I'm literally showing them, like, and we categorize stuff of like when we eat Wendy's, we categorize it as shame, like so we could track like how much is like you didn't need that much McDonald's or Wendy's or whatever it is. But it was interesting of like, oh, am I happy in what I'm showing them?
Yeah.
And it was a very silly kind of brief little experience of that, but
that will say a lot, right? Like if a person is giving regularly to charity or not, and which charities you're giving to and not. And even as I think, like, for a couple, if they're spending a ton of money on nice things for themselves and like very little on their kids, like there's just various things, or like a lot of kids and less on themselves, like where we put our money does say a lot about what we in fact kind of where our hearts are going.
Yeah, I mean that's, you could do a whole homily or talk on stewardship and taking greed in that, just purely that sense. And we even do a simple thing of like, tithing, whatever, but we put the categories of giving at the top of our budget. Like a functional weird thing like that is like that's the first thing we consider. And then we go underneath, right? Because I just know like that would get the leftovers.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I don't prioritize it first, if I don't put God first, right? I'm a sinful man, and Netflix and Disney will always go ahead, right? Like, so I need to do some external practical things like that to push back on this. Yeah.
And maybe this takes us then to some other ways that avarice can have a hold on us. And the other point I made here is that what is really the big evil of avarice, and it's often objectification. Yeah. And that, like I talked about last week with lust, is treating people as objects to use rather than people to love. And with lust, it's objects for like my own pleasure is the risk there. Whereas avarice is treating people as objects for utility and production. What can you give me? What can you do for me?
Yeah.
And one thing I thought it would be useful to talk about here is like for ourselves personally, how can this be a risk? Because it's easy sometimes to look at, like those evil billionaires and all the things they're doing. But like what we need to do is look in the mirror and say, well, where does this speak to me? And it's one example that I gave to start us off was thinking of when I'm a customer in a restaurant. Like, do I treat my server as a person to love and treat with dignity? Or do I think if I'm tipping 15%, it entitles me to treat this person as less than human? Because we probably, I hope we know the temptation, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking before we hit the record of, I worked in the service industry and, I think you have family and connections and maybe spent some time in that. And I've had a lot of great experiences in the service industry. It was my ministry life before I got paid to do ministry, right? Yeah. But there was some times that people would take, not privileges, they would take advantage of the opportunity, right? To say, no, like you're here for me. Yeah. And so I'll exploit it and that. And
like your feelings don't matter or your life outside this world doesn't matter.
You're just a cog in the production wheel, right? Or my experience of pleasure, right? Just, help achieve the end, right? The utility. Yeah. And it is a very demeaning experience. And I won't go into explicit detail, but there was one time where a guy did what is held in the service as just a very rude action, a very old traditional thing that you would do to call a slave, not even a servant.
Oh.
And I think he thought he was being funny, but it's like stuff like that. I was like, that's never funny.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
the worst part was it happened, and I was like, whatever. Like, I could disassociate of like, that's just an evil, mean thing, and I'll move on. But the real pain of that experience for me was it was at a party of like 20 people in a room, and it was loud, and everyone heard it, and nobody said anything.
Oh, yeah.
Like, as I think, well, it's kind of hard to go back to it, but it was like, yeah, I was demeaned, and nobody defended me.
Yeah.
Nobody spoke up for me. I've had other experiences where somebody has.
Yeah.
And that's been very
means a lot, right?
That means a lot,
Yeah.
right? And it really stuck with me, right? That idea of like, you can strip somebody down very easily.
Yeah.
When you get blinded by greed, right? By this
and because and in that spot, like, you do have the job of serving these people, or it does put you in a really difficult situation because of the power imbalance at that moment, or what the position is that people are in.
Yeah, I like, and that goes beyond just being, a server at a restaurant or whatever, me being a bartender is.
Yeah, and that could be for someone who's a receptionist at a
grocery clerk, and a cashier. But I think it really is what you just said there at the end. It's a power indifference, right? Or a setup is you're a customer and, the provider. And it is this sense of, to take little simple examples of like, if I see the person's name tag, like at Michael's, like I will thank them and add their name.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's a very simple thing.
Yeah.
But I want them to know that I saw them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's great. That's one thing that I actually took from this was when I was giving this example, when I said, like, do I see this person, like, say in the restaurant or a drive-through, as a person that I can love for the short time I'm together? And that was one that, like, I said, but really because it spoke to me. Because it's easy sometimes, like, I'm not going to be a jerk, but also, like, I just want to sort of get what I want and then move along, right? I could treat a person kind of with indifference as well, but I take the chance to love the person while I'm there.
Yeah.
Is, like, even the better decision.
This might seem too basic. I don't know. For some of these things is thanking people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Thanking people and affirming people's gifts. So even a simple thing. It was a couple months ago. I had to change a subscription for like this journal thing I get, and I was getting double ordered and whatever. And so it was one of these online chat things. And this person was just like really prompt, really efficient, super nice.
Yeah.
And they're like, is there anything else you can do for me? Right. And sometimes usually like it's tempted to like, just log off. You got what you need and go.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. And I can't remember the person's name. Let's call him Jimmy. It was a while ago. And I was like, no, Jimmy, that's awesome. You totally made my day. That was way easier than I thought. Right.
Yeah.
Like I wanted him to know, I was like, you didn't just accomplish what I needed, but like, I was like, I want to affirm you that like you did your job well.
Yeah,
you did your duty
really nice.
well, and you did it with joy and whatever, right? Like, because I also thought it was especially, people on the phone or on the internet, like it's easy just to like, you're so distant. There's no relationship there, right?
Yeah.
It sometimes takes little actions to kind of say like, I see you and I appreciate what you offered, what you gave me, right? Yeah.
And it is interesting, guys, what is kind of behind this is, why is it that when money is changing hands, there's a temptation not to do that? Like, it just seems something like when that happens, when I'm giving someone money for something, there's more of a temptation, I guess, for that objectification to happen. I don't know if there's an answer to that, but it does seem like a greater risk in those moments.
Yeah. I was like, I hope you're not looking for an answer because I'm not sure I have one.
But just maybe to acknowledge the risk is one thing.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. Just to be aware of it, right? To say that there's areas of our life that we're prone to maybe exploit, right? Or to, take people for granted and, to fall into that production and utility. And that's definitely one of those places. Yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe that's, if you think of then how this awareness of avarice calls us a deeper holiness, I'd say maybe it's a couple of things we found here. One is in terms of just how I use my resources, using it in terms of generosity and for others. And that's where there's a quote that I had from St. Basil the Great.
Yeah, I love that.
It is the hungry one's bread that you hoard, the naked one's cloak that you retain, the needy one's money that you withhold. Like that's a challenging series of words there.
Yeah.
So that's the first way that this calls us to greater love and holiness, is to be generous with what we have. And the secondly is to think, like, how do we view people? And especially to think that not let the fact that money is changing has been an excuse to not treat a person with love. But that has to be in there as well.
Yeah.
It has to be primary in the relationship, really, treating the person with love.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know who told my wife, and she said sometimes for our own children, but I think it goes across that in times of like when you're angry or just like, just do the dishes, just do that. Like I want to turn them into a servant, you know?
Yeah.
And she's like, I have to pause and sometimes like remember them as a baby.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And suddenly like your heart kind of softens and your eyes in which you view or you know, interact can change. And I've tried to take that sometimes with like my encounter in my ministry or young people and going in there. It's like, that's someone's child and not even of this world. This is another child of God.
Yeah.
Right. And so we are all gifts in what we all bring. Right. And so it is that spirit of generosity, but also to tie it back to the beginning, right, of abundance, you know. And when I start to view in that sense, because I think sometimes we get out of that scarcity mentality, is we get anxious and we get rushed.
Yeah.
And when I have a sense of abundance, I think I have a greater sense of peace.
Yeah.
And I think I love better, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's a thing I think I've mentioned before. Even my wife and I are doing little actions in our family of explicitly writing out things that we're grateful for.
Oh, yeah.
Right. To kind of really ground ourselves, right, in gratefulness and to be generous.
Yeah, and that also gives you the eyes to see the abundance that's there.
Yeah.
Right, when you're looking for it.
Yeah, and I like what you said there. It's the eyes to see, and sometimes that doesn't necessarily come natural from within ourselves. Like that is something we have to pray for, and we have to develop and grow. Yeah, and it comes over time.
Yeah.
Any parting words or challenges for us, Father Matt?
Oh boy, I just think how we treat people, how we treat possessions, and that all of that, it's called the generosity and love. That's really the remedy to avarice in the call. Yeah.
Amen. Well, we hope you're doing well. We pray that you can be abundant with what God has given you in this week. If God has blessed you in an abundant way, share that in the comments or let us know, as we'd love to hear those type of stories. And I don't know, you maybe pray for abundance of rain in this province.
Yes.
You know, our hearts and minds are going out with a lot of people dealing with the fires and farmers and everybody. So maybe God can bless us abundantly in that way here in this coming week as well. And until next week, you be well, and we'll see you soon.